The first part of the proceedings today will be going through, we'll be seeing a couple of films, so there's plenty of time to make sure that you are logged in correctly, ready to vote. But if you get stuck and you're in the room, speak to someone here in a blue t-shirt. If you're not in the room, contact agm@u3a.org.uk, and we've got staff people on there looking out for your emails. Put your phone number in as well, please. Okay. Before I pass over to Liz Zachary, our chair, I just wanted to take you through a few housekeeping points for the people here in the room. So my name's Sam Morgar. I'm the Chief Executive of the Third Age Trust. As far as we understand it, we're not expecting a fire alarm today. So if the fire alarm goes off, please leave the room, go straight down the corridor and turn right at the grey double doors. When you're outside, turn left to the assembly point, which is the 3 flagpoles outside the main reception, so where you came in. But just follow us in the blue t-shirts. That'll make it easier. Yeah, absolutely. There is a hearing loop in here today if you need one. There is an accessible toilet just down the corridor here on the left, and there's a ladies and gents just down here on the left. And there's also more toilets upstairs if you happen to need them, and there's a bit of a queue. We will be taking a break at 1:15 for half an hour because we've got quite a lot of business to get through today, and we think at that point people might want to take just a break to have a cup of coffee and stretch your legs. We've got some sandwich lunch here for people here in the room, and for people at home, I'm sure you'll make your own arrangements for your lunch too. So with that, I'm now going to pass over to Liz Zachary, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. This, as you know, is the informal plenary part of the meeting, and we're going to have an opportunity to see a couple of films, as Sam has said, and then there's an opportunity for a space after these films to sort out any technical problems there might be. So firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today and for being here for this presentation before the AGM, and I hope that as far as possible, if you haven't felt as though you've been on a marathon, that you will stay for the presentations we're planning to make after the AGM later today. This has been a momentous year in many ways. It's been our 40th anniversary, and I'm sure a lot of the folk in this room have been involved one way or another in celebrating our anniversary. And today is a business meeting, but at this point in this meeting, we're about celebrating our past successes, looking at where we are at the moment, and looking at where we're going in the future. And it's unfortunate that Michaela hasn't been able to be with us today, Michaela Moody, who's our Vice Chair, as she's been our lead on the anniversary celebrations and has used her extensive experience as a u3a member to ensure that as far as possible, all the various aspects of u3a life have been included in the various anniversary activities that she's been organising. And I know that there's been lots of other things going on apart from those things that we've been involved in directly. So though Michaela isn't here today, she has made a film of what she would have been saying if she had been here today. And we're now going to have that opportunity to see Michaela, who has been very ably assisted by Julie Travers, who most of you probably met when you registered and who we'll see more of probably later today, in putting together so many different events. So let's enjoy what Michaela has to say about the anniversary year. Yeah. As I say, it's a great pity that Michaela's not been here in person today, but as we can see, she's been involved in a great deal of activity over the past 12 months, and particularly over the 6 months that we've been engaged in our anniversary celebrations. You'll have noticed that one of the things that she mentioned during the film was the anniversary lunch that we held in May, and which I was privileged to host, where we had a number of other guests apart from Eric Midwinter, people who had played a significant part in the early development of the u3a movement. Before lunch, Eric and I sat down in front of a fireplace and we had a conversation, and that conversation was filmed, and we're going to show you now the film of that. This film you're about to see and the film that Michaela has made will both be made available on our YouTube channels for future viewing by anybody who wants to have another look at them or to share them with others. Yes, it was quite an experience to have that conversation with Eric, and as you can see, we touched quite a number of different issues during it, and I think it's probably looking at it again, seeing some of the things that we were saying, perhaps sharing it with others. But again, as I say, it's going to be on the YouTube channel and available for viewing by anybody who cares to see it. We're now going to be taking a break until the official formal start of our AGM, which will be at 11:30, which gives that opportunity to sort out any technical problems, to stretch legs before there's a long sitting down, and basically to get ourselves ready for the more formal proceedings.
Just going to remind everybody again of the housekeeping rules. So, hello once again, I'm Sam Morga, the Chief Executive of the Third Age Trust. Just once more, for those of you that have arrived since this morning's first session, we're not expecting a fire alarm, but if there is a fire alarm, please leave the room, head straight down the corridor and turn right at the grey double doors. Then head outside, turn left to the assembly point, which are the 3 flagpoles outside the main reception. And as I said before, if in doubt, follow us in the blue shirts and we'll take you to safety. We are taking photographs today because we'd like to put the photographs on the website later. If there is anyone who does not wish to have their photograph taken, please will they tell a member of staff who are the people, can the member of staff wave? All our members of staff wave, all our members of staff wave. Who are the people in the blue t-shirts, and they will make sure that your photo isn't included in it. So if you do not wish to do that, please let them know, preferably by the time we take the first break. We will be taking a break at 1:15 today, and that is because we've got a lot of business to get through, and to give you all a break, we're going to stop at 1:15 for 30 minutes, just so that you can stretch your legs, get a cup of coffee, have a sandwich, for people at home and for people here in the room. We have got a loop here, and as I mentioned before, the accessible toilet is just on the corridor to the left, as are the ladies' and gentlemen's toilets. So thank you very much.
Well, what a wonderful opportunity for me. I'm the secretary of the Milton Keynes u3a. My name is Brian, and it's a really great pleasure to welcome you to Milton Keynes as well as to the Kents Hill Conference Centre. It's all celebration because we here in Milton Keynes have celebrated our 35th anniversary this year, alongside the 40th anniversary of the national body. And we had an absolutely fabulous event at a local theatre, which some of you may have heard of, the Dankworth Theatre, called The Stables, and it was a great success. So we are delighted to welcome you to what is now a city. We've been calling it a city for 50 years, and it's now officially a city, and that's enough from me. So have an enjoyable AGM.
Thank you so much, Brian, for the welcome to Milton Keynes. And as I think you know, we have been at various other meetings here that you may not have known about at the time. But I'd like to say a particular thank you to you and your u3a members who've been so helpful today in helping people to find their way around this building, getting people into the right places, and all the other help that you've been giving. So it's great to see, you know, that you came forward as volunteers and said, what can we do? And you're doing it. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll begin the AGM. First of all, we have, sorry. Sorry. We have 540 people already logged into the event. If any of you are having difficulty at home logging in, please contact agm@u3a.org.uk. We have staff on the AGM box and they're looking out for you, so please come forward if you need some help and they will assist you. During the first vote, we are going to give ourselves some time to enable everyone to be sure that they've managed to vote successfully. So we're going to take a bit of take some time over that first vote. So hopefully you'll all be able to get through that successfully. And once you've done the first one, I think you'll find the ones following fairly straightforward. So I'm the Chief Executive and the Company Secretary of the Third Age Trust. And I'll be taking you through the introduction to the event before passing over to Liz Thackeray, Chair, who will be chairing the AGM today. Today, we have u3as joining us remotely from all over the UK to hear the debate and vote on the business of today. We've got a lot of business. And we have some members here in person that we very warmly welcome you. And also people joining us, u3a members joining us remotely. And as was mentioned at the very beginning, and I think it's a theme running through the entire event, the u3a is all of us. So every member, every u3a committee member, every volunteer for the trust, every staff member and the Board of Trustees, we are all contributing and dedicated to the u3a movement and want to keep it strong and vibrant and ready to face all of the future as we emerge from the pandemic. We have taken steps to make this meeting as accessible as possible, and I do hope that everybody feels fully able to participate in the event. I want to just explain a few things about the voting procedure that we're going to use today. For those of you that are registered to vote, you will have votes appear automatically on your screens to the right of the video under the Vote tab. And when the vote begins, it will automatically switch to this tab. Alternatively, you can click on the Vote tab and wait for the votes to appear. But as I said before, we are going to take our time over that first vote. Once a vote has begun, you will see the resolution or the amendment being voted on. And all you need to do is select your voting choice from the options on the screen. Once you've chosen your option, that one will highlight and the others will all grey out. If you need to change your choice, you can click again on the option you want to select before the voting time ends. And for those of you in the room and those attending remotely, remember to ensure the device you're using is fully charged and is on the AGM site, the u3a AGM site. And as I said before, if you have any difficulty, do ask a member of staff here in the room or contact agm@u3a.org.uk. At various points in the meeting, voting delegates joining us remotely will be able to submit comments or questions depending on the item. So if you want to ask a question, please use the panel to the right of the video and click on the questions tab and type in your question in the field and then press click to submit. They are all going to come up on a screen here, so we're going to be able to see them as they come through at the relevant item. And the chair of that particular section of the meeting will read or summarise the points, and they'll either answer it themselves or they'll pass it over to the relevant presenter. And for those of you in the room, please could you just raise your hand and the chair will indicate when it's your turn to speak. According to our attendance report, we have a quorum of well over 10% of members, u3a members taking part. So I have pleasure in declaring the meeting open. 595 u3as indicated they wish to participate in the AGM, which equates to 383 u3a delegates holding 833 votes at the AGM. And I will give you the rest of the statistics which we have here. Slides up. Actually, have we got the slides? Oh, here we go. We've got it behind us, so it saved me looking for it. Yep. So we can go a slide back, please, if that's all right. Yeah, so 595 have indicated they wish to participate in the events. 383 u3a delegates hold 833 votes at the event. And if we can move on to the proxies, 212 u3as have proxied 425 votes to the company secretary, of which 129 u3as with 265 votes gave specific instruction to the company secretary. So that means they've told the company secretary exactly how they want their vote to go. And 4 u3as proxied votes to other u3as, and their votes have been given to that other u3a to use. So that gives a total of 595 u3as with 1,258 votes engaging with the vote process. So let's move on. So I'm now going to hand over to Liz Thackeray, who's going to take us through the agenda. Liz.
Yes. I hope you'll excuse me sitting as well for this opening part of the meeting. And firstly, I want to say hello to everyone. Whether you're here online or in person, it's really good that there's been so many people wanting to engage with the AGM this year. We're all aware that not only in the UK, but throughout the world, we're all facing challenges at the moment. And most of these challenges are unprecedented in most of our lifetimes. It can feel a little bit like trying to balance on the kind of raft that some of us may have constructed at some time in the past. You know, the type of thing where you're desperately clinging on to this piece of wood, which, while the river current's increasing and the oil drums that you thought you'd tied on securely look as though they're about to drift off any moment. And in this situation, it can be very difficult to make plans for the future, knowing that those plans may need to change at any moment due to circumstances beyond our control. And during the past weeks, there's been much discussion and debate focusing not only on the business of today, but on the relationship between the board and the u3as. Although it's painful and difficult to hear criticism, we recognise the need to improve our two-way communications. There are decisions to be made today, but the board is well aware of the need to adjust our thinking in the light of changing circumstances and to hear what members are saying to us. Without any further delay, I will move to item 1 on the agenda, the approval of the minutes from the last year's AGM. I think there is a mobile phone that was going off. So if for everybody, if you have got a mobile, if you can put it on silent, and then hopefully we won't get any more disruptions. But as I was saying, without any further delay, I'll move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from last year's AGM. And may I have a u3a to propose and a u3a to second this resolution? In order to propose, could you write the name of your u3a voting representative and the name of your u3a in the question box on the voting screen? And if you're wishing to second, could you write the name of your u3a's voting representative and the name of your u3a in the question box? Once we have those, I will ask Sam to confirm them because she can see the screen which the responses will come up on, and I can't see it clearly from where I'm sitting. So if you wish to propose or second the adoption of the minutes from last year's AGM, if you could do the
Technology.
this is where oh
there we go. So we have Phil Hawthorne from Winchcombe area, u3a, who is happy to propose, and Sandy Bowden from Bromley u3a, who is happy to second.
Thank you. So for those of you that are the registered person from your AGM to vote for the registered person from your u3a to vote at the AGM, your votes will appear to the right of the video under the Vote tab on your screen, I hope.
We're in the voting one for...
And when the vote begins, it should automatically switch to this tab, or alternatively, you can click on the Vote tab and wait for the votes to appear. Once the vote has begun, you'll see the resolution being voted on. Simply select your voting choice from the options shown on the screen. I can't see the screen, so I don't know what you're actually seeing. The option you have clicked will highlight and other options will become greyed out. And if you need to change your voting choice due to error, please click again on the option you wish to select. I'm now opening the poll for you to cast your votes on item 1 of the agenda. The slide will remind you how to cast your votes. We're keeping this open for a few minutes, and if you've got a problem, could you signal, and one of the staff in blue t-shirts will hopefully come and sort out what needs to be done with you.
And just so we're going to leave this open for slightly longer this time around, so to give everybody the opportunity remotely and here in the room to exercise your votes.
The system is working. It's just a case of making sure that the equipment at this end is working.
Ready to go?
I think most people are now organised. If there's anybody else who's still struggling,
Okay, are we okay to move, and I will give you the result of the vote? Going to move on. Yep.
yes, we're almost there. We'll give a little bit more time when we come to the next vote as well, just in case those people are still having teething problems with the system. So, Sam, if you'd like to...
Yes, so we're pleased to know that actually a lot of people did manage this very successfully. We have 868 votes in favour of Resolution 1, 5 against and 110 abstentions. There we go.
So this poll is now closed, and I'm pleased to declare that Resolution 1 is passed.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, we're getting strange comments from the front row where we've got trustees sitting, so just ignore them. I'm now going to move on to item 2 on the agenda, which is my report. And I think for ease, and so that you can see me as well as see whatever slides there are, I'll move over to the lectern. When 18 months or so ago, somebody said to me, "Have you ever thought?" I had no thought or expectation that I might be standing here today, giving this report to the AGM of the Third Age Trust in this, our 40th anniversary year. I am very conscious that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants of the u3a movement, who have done so much to make the u3a what it is today. We've got a very full agenda, so I'm going to keep what I've got to say short, and I'm not going to regurgitate what you can read in the printed, well, not the printed, but the online version of the annual report, which is available to all. But the last 2.5 years have been challenging. I don't think any of us would deny that. 2020 brought with it the COVID pandemic, with restrictions that limited our opportunities to engage in face-to-face activities for the best part of 2 years. Although for many life has returned to something of the old normal, there are many u3a members who want to meet each other again, but are still anxious of doing so. Our growing use of technology can fill some gaps, but it doesn't replace human contact. U3As are to be congratulated on the efforts made by many to keep in touch with those members who continue to live restricted lives. But we're now facing new challenges, and it can feel as though we're being visited by the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, as war rages in Ukraine, flooding and fire has affected farmers' ability to meet food requirements, transport disruption has affected not only travel but transportation of everyday necessities, inflation and soaring costs of food and energy is leading to hardship for many. We also face challenges as a movement. U3As report problems recruiting volunteers to sit on committees and to lead interest groups. And those problems are shared by the u3a Trust, as no nominations were received for trustee vacancies in the East Midlands and London. My mailbox has made it clear that some members feel disenfranchised and view the Trust as moving in directions they feel are inappropriate. It's clear that we need to address these issues. In the plenary session following this AGM, there will be an update on the strategy plan, which was introduced at last year's AGM. I, together with other trustees, will present our thinking on how to enhance the voice of u3as in the development of trust activities. A couple of weeks ago, we held our first open online forum, and I'd like to thank Sue Russell, who is with us today, for helping to facilitate that through the network link. Questions were raised by members and discussed, and we hope to build on this with further opportunities for exchange of ideas between u3a members, the staff team and the trustees, and we're very open to suggestions as how we can improve our two-way communications. We're not claiming that we've got it right yet, but we need everybody's help to make sure that we improve and get things better. 2022 marks our 40th anniversary as an organisation. As many of you have already seen, Michaela Moody, our retiring Vice Chair, shared the highlights of the past month before this meeting, and the film, as I said earlier, will be available on YouTube. And personally, I was privileged to host a lunch in May to celebrate Eric Midwinter's contribution to the u3a movement, and coincidentally, we were also celebrating his 90th birthday. We were joined by a number of past chairs at the Third Age Trust and others who have contributed to the movement over the years. During the past year, I've spent time with a number of u3as around the country, sharing celebrations and learning about the challenges being confronted by different u3as and hearing the stories of u3as that are growing and literally bringing in new members off the streets. In a movement of well over 1,000 u3as, it's hardly surprising that while we all share common names and values, u3as differ considerably, but a strength of being part of the same movement is that we can all learn from each other. The Retention and Recruitment Working Group, which has now finished its work, has created a resource bank of tried and tested examples of what different u3as have done to raise our profile locally. Network and regional meetings provide opportunities for exchanging ideas. Although social media is sometimes likened to the Wild West, it offers opportunities to share good news alongside airing concerns and frustrations. Our experience of online meetings has taught us that it's not always necessary to meet in person. And indeed, this AGM is a hybrid meeting, and nearly around half the total number of u3as in the country have registered to attend either this meeting in person or the hybrid version or the online version of the meeting, which I understand is one of the highest percentages of u3as we've had participating in an AGM for many years. But no doubt our in-person attendance today has also been influenced by some of the pressures that are on us. The rail strikes that have been making it difficult for people to move around the country, and some of our trustees are not present simply because they couldn't get here physically. u3a volunteers and members of the staff team have worked together to provide a wide range of learning events over the past year, and training and information workshops and most board committee and working group meetings will remain online, though there will be some in-person meetings when there is a clear argument for doing so. The Let's Talk Tech volunteers have developed resources to support hybrid working and hold a weekly meeting exploring different aspects of online working, in which they provide support to u3as who are developing now not only online working but other aspects of technology usage. As I said before, I'm not going to repeat what you can read in the annual report, but I do want to say a very real thank you to all of you who serve the movement locally, regionally and nationally. A particular thanks goes to those trustees who have come to the end of their periods of service. Michaela Moody has retired as Vice Chair for the second time, but will be updating and maintaining our archives. Jean Hogg has served 4 years as Trustee for the East Midlands and latterly Chair of the Development Committee. And Anne Keating has served 3 years as Trustee for Scotland and Chair of the Communications and External Affairs Committee. John Bent has completed 5 years' service as a Trustee for London, but is not escaping, as we hope to co-opt him to the board later today so that we can continue to benefit from his financial expertise. Compared with other large voluntary organisations, our staff team is very small, and we are extremely fortunate to have a large number of volunteers working regionally and nationally, doing many tasks which in many other organisations might be undertaken by paid employees. We're fortunate to have a staff team who all demonstrate a genuine commitment to the u3a movement and a willingness to go the second mile. A number of staff are with us today, and I do hope the opportunity will be taken over lunch to speak to the staff, to get to know each other and not just to talk to the folk you know, but the folk that you don't know. And finally, I want to say thank you to my colleagues on the board. Regional and national trustees have each taken on what is virtually a full-time job in supporting the movement and keeping us legal. And last but by no means least, thanks go to Sam Mauger for all that she contributes to the Trust and the u3a movement. We're now going to move on to items 3 and 4, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce Derek Harwood, our Treasurer, to deliver his report on the last financial year. Derek, it's over to you.
May I say something very quickly, because we've had just a message through from, I think, someone who is attending remotely to ask to put a reminder out about the email address for support. It's agm@u3a.org.uk. agm@u3a.org.uk. Thank you. Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Liz and Sam. So, like Liz, this is my first year in the position of Treasurer, and hence my first report at the AGM. So please be gentle with me. So I'm going to run through 6 elements here. Firstly, looking at picking some key points from the annual accounts, the income and expenditure account, which shows the overall picture of the group. So I'm talking the numbers are the group, which is the Third Age Trust, and Tattle, Third Age Trading Limited. And as you know probably, the trading company manages on behalf of the trust the Third Age Matters magazine, Beacon, the membership system, and our merchandising range. We'll be comparing performance to last year's. Number 2 then is to have a look at the balance sheet, the consolidated balance sheet. Number 3 will be to look at a bit more detail about Tattle's accounts. Number 4 is to then look at the budget figures for this year. And then number 5 there, looking at our cash position and our reserves. And then lastly, looking ahead for some forecast information. So firstly then, as I say, income and expenditure. Our income has been dropping over the last 3 years, but so has our expenditure. Liz has touched on the reasons in terms of pandemic and cutting back on activities. And that has meant that we've actually had an increase of our cash reserves. So some negative and some positive in there. And largely the drop in income is down to a number of factors, but largely just the drop in membership numbers. You may be aware that at peak we were about 460,000 members, and then through pandemic we dropped to 366,000. We're now pulling back up, recovering, and these numbers I'm glad to say are recovering, but through the last year we were seeing low membership numbers. We're also looking at, we are highly dependent obviously in terms of income on yourselves, in terms of subscriptions, but we are looking at trying to widen our income streams. And actually, we had sort of a pleasant surprise in terms of donation levels. We're good, we're higher than we expected, and that's another area we hope to grow and expand on, and we're looking at other ways to diversify our income stream. The other sort of good news out of last year was, with a drop in membership, our income could have been worse, but income was improved by being able to recover the full amount of 81,000 that we actually paid to APT, the company that failed for the Beacon 2 delivery project. And the second area of cost recovery basically was the YM, the printers of the Third Age Matters, which again had trouble in terms of printing. So we managed to recover 29,000 from them. The challenges of running a u3a don't get any easier, I'm sure you're all aware, and generally the charity commission's requirements and regulations are ever increasing. Hence, actually, the calls for help and support and guidance increase the burden on the office and our small staff team. But they've coped remarkably well through the pandemic, largely by working with home. So our actual overheads were down last year compared to previous. Assets, looking at the balance sheet here, broadly in terms of assets, not much change. The growth we're seeing there overall is cash assets growing, as I touched on earlier. Specifically, fixed assets are a bit lower now because we, as you probably again know, are aware that we've moved into rented accommodation, so we've not got a fixed lease. We've got a small office that was just on a rented basis. Cash in the bank has now, as I mentioned, improved and is growing. Debtors at the time of cut-off at the accounts, we had some debtors which included the TAM receipts, advertising commission and Beacon licence. These all came in just after the cut-off and have been paid in full. So we don't actually have any underlying bad debts. That's the main point really. Moving on then, the third area really is to look, as I said, in a bit more detail on the Tattle, our training company. So just as a reminder again, they're covering our trading activities, which is basically three areas: the magazine, the TAM magazine, Beacon, provision of software, and our merchandising range, which hopefully you've been able to see samples of in the room next door. So Tattle, the accounts and management of that company are overseen by their own board of directors. They only have one trust shareholder, which is the trust. The Tattle AGM was earlier in the year, and they approved their accounts on the 15th of July. Overall, Tattle made a profit for the year of 161,000, compared to a previous loss last year of 41,000. But as I say, they benefited by the recovery, the 109 recovery of those failed contracts, the APT contract for Beacon 2 and YM for the printing TAM costs. But not to decry their performance, the difference, the 52,000 was good, a good result. And each of the three areas of business, lines of business, contributing. Advertising revenue for TAM held up well, providing a surplus. Income from Beacon license continues to grow as more u3as and networks move on to Beacon. We have over 500 now using Beacon. And the third element, the merchandising line of business, continues to grow in terms of the range and sales generally. And of course, last year, to support the 40th anniversary, we brought in the option of buying a tree or a copse even. So that helped towards our income figures. Moving on, so that's the accounts, the annual accounts. Moving on to the budget sheets that's published separately. And reminding that the budget figures that we're quoting here are now this year. The annual accounts were obviously for last year. I've mentioned the aspect in terms of membership levels improving from the low of last year, so that's positive. To set the budget this year, we gave ourselves a target of recovering from the 366,000 low membership figure to 400,000. So that's the budget basis. I think we'll fall a bit short. We're looking at about 388,000. So the membership is growing, but not as quick as we maybe would have liked it. So that's hopefully still an area for growth to recover further in future years. The growth, though, to our current figures, the increase again helps the trust in terms of subscriptions, but also helps Tattle in terms of their sales, be it for the magazine or the merchandising. So that that 1.4 million there is their expected income for this year. So that's our income expectations. Moving on to expenditure now for this year. And the first point, of course, to make is when we set these budgets and the expenditure figures, this was back in really, board approval, I think it was about March. In other words, before we all started to see the high inflation levels that we've got in the country at the moment. So that is a challenge to the basis of the budget was set for just this year alone. However, in terms of strategy, Liz touched on strategy and more of that later, but that certainly for this year, near-term strategy, it was all about emerging, coming out of pandemic, starting up some of our activities, and some of our projects. You may recall again, we had a designated development fund, and that was all frozen. But this year we're restarting the delayed, the postponed development projects. We set aside originally 446,000 as I say, designated funds. And this year the plan is to get going with those development projects and then utilise about 419,000 within that budget allocation. And that's capital and overheads as well. Another area in terms of this budget for this year is actually the allocation of monies towards grants. And basically the increase is to help you, the u3as. So we have got allocations within the grants for restart, u3as that are needing help. Maybe they've been closed down, you've been closed down through pandemic, you need to restart activities, incur costs in terms of try to re-recruit members. So that's the purpose of the grants. They are for you. Another type of grant we've got in there, the special events grants. That allocation, budget allocation, is again for u3as, regions, networks to use in terms of special events in the title, but particularly 40th anniversary and all the events that you have been putting on, picnic in the park or whatever. So there are grants still available for those sort of activities. Premises budget I touched on in terms of how things have changed through pandemic. So again, this year, the premises budget is actually lower because we're expecting to basically carry on the way we've been almost forced to work over the pandemic in terms of working from home to a certain extent, hybrid working. Sometimes the staff are in the office, sometimes they're working from home. The hot desking aspect in terms of, I was trying to explain earlier, so it's to tell you that the actual office space, the room, the office is sort of half the size of next door. So we have got a very small space, but that's because of the flexibility of the staff and how they work from home and or only in the office at certain times. So that does, as I say, mean that we can keep our overhead, our premises costs down. Lastly, moving on to the big one of staff cost. Again, as I think Liz mentioned earlier, when we look at other charities, we are actually very small. We have a very small staff team. Through pandemic, it was about 17 what we call full-time equivalents. So as I mentioned, some are part-time, different hours or whatever. So when you work that out, that used to be about 17 full-time equivalents. The budget for this year is to grow the team back up to support execution of these development projects, to support the u3as in terms of startup queries, whatever, to 24 full-time equivalents. I think we're probably about 22 as we speak in terms of recruiting, so still a few vacancies potentially there. But as I say, recovering the capability within the staff team and the level of support we can offer yourselves. I mentioned support. I mean, it's amazing to me always in terms of the amount of calls that member services receive. So it's actually over 1,000 calls, be it by email or phone call, per month that Alison's team have to deal with. And just reflects, as I said earlier, the growing challenges for u3as, for yourselves, in terms of coping with growing regulation or accounts requirements or whatever. So, as I say, the budget is there to support that staff team and hence support yourselves. Fifth area I said I would cover was group reserves. So just to remind you what we have within our cash assets, the basis of our collective reserves. Firstly, we have a Barbara Lewis fund, which is a restricted fund of 12,000 to be used for helping get new u3as started. That's the principle, that's why it's classed as a restricted fund. We also then have 446,000 which are designated funds, and that was designated for development projects, which, as I say, have kicked off now. So that left then accumulated cash assets, in other words, unrestricted general funds of just under 1.6 million. which sounds a lot, but actually for the size of our organisation, in accordance with Charity Commission's guidance, our required reserves, in accordance with our published reserves policy, is we actually need 1.3 million in true reserves. And that's, as you probably are aware, that's the principle as defined by the Charity Commission is for wind-up and closure costs. So hopefully we won't actually need those, but that's the level of the reserves that we have to hold. This is then the sort of picture of the same, really. So as I mentioned, in terms of through pandemic, less activities, less spend, then our reserves level have increased. And as I again repeat, all these figures, of course, are our budget and based on expenditures without inflation. Okay, forecast, the last element for myself, looking at some forecast. And probably the hardest elements in terms of, for a treasurer, in terms of guessing what the future holds. As again Liz touched on earlier, we're certainly aware that we're in uncertain times. So, you know, pick any element. Membership. What is our membership going to be like next year, next 5 years' time? Are we going to plateau at 400? Are we going to get back to peak in terms of 460? Are we going to grow further with the positive input of voice and emerge our cornerstones? So what membership should we be using in our forecast? Uncertainty, unknown. Inflation, again, I think it was 8% or so is today, keeps changing up and down. What's it going to be next year? Is it going to rise further? Is it going to stay steady? Are the days of inflation back with us for a long period? Or is it, I'm trying to stay out of politics here, but is the Chancellor going to solve it and the Bank of England and inflation will come down? We don't know. It's another unknown. I mentioned development. So we had a focus, a scope in terms of the development projects that were stalled by the pandemic. These are off and running. We are looking, and Alan is going to show you a bit in terms of our thoughts for the future, thoughts for strategy. How does that translate into future developments? We all know that we're moving forward into a more and more digital world. What does that mean for u3a? Do we need more digital services, either within the office or to support your use of digital, your members' support of digital? Another unknown, really. So it's difficult to crystal ball, but here's a few scenarios that I've put together. A bit complicated maybe, and you could kind of ignore the numbers really, but it's the trends here that I'm trying to show. And as I said, this one is without inflation, so you could maybe say not realistic or whatever, but anyway, this basis in terms of expenditures is without. So that's why in terms of the blue line expenditure, we're basically saying, well, this is what we've budgeted for this year. This is our costs for this year. Let's expect that for to carry on. Income again, this is based on a flat, a steady membership, but on a growth set of income, which basically means that our cash reserves, we are eating into our cash reserves because of that designated funds for development projects. If we carry on developing, carry on spending, we will dip down, our cash reserves will drop, and hence actually drop below what is required in terms of charity commission. And hence, of course, why we move on to resolutions later on the day with regard to subscription levels. The next one then is putting in a figure for inflation. So this is showing a 10% constant inflation. So, you know, hopefully a sort of worst case. And all it basically shows is, well, we dip further quicker in terms of assuming other things are kept the same in terms of what we want to try to do in terms of development rather than try to cut back or stop activities. But without any change on income, then we have further challenges, put it that way. And I think that's basically it for me. So back to Liz. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. We would now like to use the question function so that you can submit any questions or comments you may have on the accounts or on my report. If you would like to submit a question or a comment, type your message in the question box to the right of the video at the bottom of the messaging screen. And if you're having problems finding that, again, if you can either use the contact email if you're online to the AGM at u3a.org.com, or if you're in the room, if you could put your hand up and somebody in a blue shirt will come and hopefully sort it out for you. When you've typed your message, please click submit, and then we'll take a short break while you have a chance to submit questions and we will gather them together. But I'll use that break so we're not just sitting here just waiting to address a question which I've been asked several times over the past 2-3 months, and which I think is possibly one that may come up anyway. When we move into the question and answer period, we'll endeavour to read aloud and answer the questions or comments that have been submitted. But due to time constraints, we may not be able to address every question that's asked. And in that event, we will provide a mailing with the relevant questions and answers as soon as we can after this meeting. So basically it's the question box to the right of video at the bottom of the messaging screen if you want to submit a question. And in the room, are we still using the same system? But in the room, you don't have to find the screen because we can take questions by raising hands. And Alistair, who is sitting at the front, and Chris, who is on the other side, will identify who has got questions in the room. But while we're going through this, gathering questions or finding out who has got questions, the question I wanted to address is the one that's been asked me several times is, why don't you withdraw or amend the resolutions? And I want to address that because it's been one that I know has concerned quite a lot of people through the debates that have been going on over the past few weeks. And there were a number of factors why we did not make a change or remove the resolutions. The first was that we took advice as to whether we could make any amendments. And the advice given to us was that once we had put the resolutions out for consultation to the membership and invited amendments to them, that we could not make changes ourselves. The options that we had were that we could, if we so decided, withdraw our resolutions and present revised versions of them. But the problem with that was that there is a limited time between the time in which the resolutions are put out for consultation and the AGM, and there actually would not have been time to allow the proper response to those answers, which meant that yes, we could withdraw, but no, we couldn't amend, and the only way we could get an amendment would be by issuing a new resolution, which there wouldn't be sufficient time for consultation. Now, yes, we did consider whether we should withdraw the amendments, but again, what we were very aware of was that very many members were engaging with the debate over the resolutions, and it was our considered view that if we were to withdraw the resolutions and not provide the opportunity for members to submit their amendments, that this would be effectively silencing the voice of our members, and this seemed wrong to us in a democratic organisation, and we did not want to be seen as either not listening or silencing. And alongside that, as a board, we considered that our resolutions were